And so let's dive into this, right? So before I get into the family weekend itself, right? It was my sister's birthday, and it was like I went home from work kind of thing, gave her the presents, and she was very happy and stuff like that. So we were doing that, and then we were packing, right? We're packing the car with all our suitcases and our clothes and everything like that, so that we could drive up to Pitlochry. Now, Pitlochry is actually a bit far away from Glasgow. Actually, no, it was only about an hour and 30 minutes or something like that. So we were driving up there, right? But the interesting thing about this whole driving experience, to say the least, was the fact that there was a very, very big traffic jam. And what do I mean by that, right? So it was an hour and 30 minutes, but there was like a lot of these cars, like there was like 100 cars in this queue, and it was like these temporary like traffic lights where it'd be like red, orange, green, red, orange, green, and people would just be waiting and waiting and waiting. And I even believe that there was this one point where like these people would get out of their vehicles because they just got fed up of waiting in this traffic. And I believe that the thing was actually called the A9. It's like this thing on this Pitlochry motorway sort of thing. It was in Pitlochry. We're driving up to Perthshire. Are these this like far up, a bit far from Glasgow sort of thing. So there's definitely that kind of stuff, right? And certainly the traffic jam wasn't the biggest highlight of the experience because we just wanted to see what this house was like, and going in, I didn't really know what this house had to offer because I never really looked it up and things of that nature. So there's that, and then I think there's like one of my sisters and her boyfriend actually had this experience where there was this traffic jam and then there was like this car crash as well as that. So it just made it even worse, and it took them longer to even get to this house. So by the time we got to this house, right, we were greeted by this very, very big house. What do I mean by that? Like the house kind of looked very, very big.
You are about to experience the James Rambling Show, hosted by James Patton.
Hello, welcome back to the James Ramblin' Show for yet another episode. And in today's episode, I am back from a week off of the show because I decided to spend time with family instead of making it all about me recording this, recording that, blah de blah de blah. So there's that. But before I even dive into that whole thing and discuss what that whole family weekend was like, I will just quickly mention that I have actually got a few reviews that I put out for you. So there was the Killer review, there was like the Marvels and Napoleon. I won't go too into that because that's not really important right now. Family is actually important. So let's dive into this, right? So before I get into the family weekend itself, right, it was my sister's birthday, and it was like I went home from work kind of thing, gave her the presents, and she was very happy and stuff like that. So we were doing that, and then we were packing, right? We're packing the car with all our suitcases and our clothes and everything like that, so that we could drive up to Pitlochry. Now, Pitlochry is actually a bit far away from Glasgow. Actually, no, it was only about an hour and 30 minutes or something like that. So we were driving up there, right? But the interesting thing about this whole driving experience, to say the least, was the fact that there was a very, very big traffic jam. And what do I mean by that, right? So it was an hour and 30 minutes, but there was like a lot of these cars, like there was like 100 cars in this queue, and it was like these temporary like traffic lights where it'd be like red, orange, green, red, orange, green, and people would just be waiting and waiting and waiting. And I even believe that there was this one point where these people would get out of their vehicles because they just got fed up of waiting in this traffic. And I believe that the thing was actually called the A9. It's like this thing on this Pitlochry motorway sort of thing. It was in Pitlochry. We're driving up to Perthshire. Are these this like far up, a bit far from Glasgow sort of thing. So there's definitely that kind of stuff, right? And certainly the traffic jam wasn't the biggest highlight of the experience because we just wanted to see what this house was like, and going in, I didn't really know what this house had to offer because I never really looked it up and things of that nature. So there's that, and then I think my other there's like one of my sisters and her boyfriend actually had this experience where there was a traffic jam and then there was like this car crash as well as that. So it just made it even worse, and it took them longer to even get to this house. So by the time we got to this house, right, we were greeted by this very very big house. What do I mean by that? Like the house kind of looked very very big, to say the least, because there's a lot of rooms as well. Like there's like when you walk through this house, it feels like this person must have poured a lot of money into this. I mean, I don't even remember this one aspect where there's like these lights, like you know how I have my lights in my room, for example, right? I can just turn it off at any time, right? Because I have the switch at the wall or whatever. But in this house, the lights just automatically turn off and on. Like there's times when the lights would dim and then it would get really bright, and then it would dim, and then it would get really bright. So there's kind of that and stuff like that. But another interesting detail about this whole experience was how there was a lot of hangover. And what do I mean by that? Right, is like a lot of people in my family drunk a lot on that Friday night. By the time they got to the Saturday morning to the Sunday morning, they were really hungover. I even remember my family member called Stuart, who actually got really really hungover as well in this experience. And he was like really hungover, and he drank a lot of beer and stuff like that. And to say the least, right, in this whole entire experience, when it came to that aspect of being hungover and stuff like that, I only had like 4 or 5 Guinnesses in this whole experience, so I wasn't going crazy on this beer or anything like that. So you've definitely got that where you got the traffic jam situation, you've got them being hungover, it being a big house, and there was also the aspect of how I kind of got lost at certain points because it's such a big house and I've never been in this house before. I was like, where's the toilet? Where's my bedroom? Where is this? Where is that? So you get those aspects in there, but there was also this walk that I actually went on in this experience. And what do I mean by that, right? So, me, my sister Laura, right, the birthday girl sort of thing, my mum, my dad, and actually two of her friends, Natasha, Alana, and their children, like Lillian and Harris or whatever, where we went on this walk to this dam where you seen a lot of this water shooting out of this bit into into this river, like kind of thing, and it kind of is showing you how this electricity is developed, and it was quite interesting to say the least. Like kind of getting to see how this electricity would actually be developed was interesting to me, to say the least. And to say the least, right, I definitely think this was a very very good experience for me and my family to have. Like sometimes you just got to have that family experience going on. But there was also like this quiz about, and there's this whole quiz that we did as well on top of this. Like, my sister Jodie and her boyfriend organised this quiz where it kind of was like, from what I remember, it was like there was general knowledge, right? There was like sports, there was films, there was all of that kind of stuff. But then there was like this Laura round where it was like all about her. So some of the questions were like, how many ducks awards did she win in her time in like high school or whatever. So duck awards is like, it's like this award where you get a, like, it's like when you do really well at school, you get this very very special award. So there's that, and then there's like the year of and make of a car, right? The year of a car or whatever. There's all these questions about it, right? All these kind of like questions and stuff like that, and it was interesting to say the least because we were kind of finding it hard with some of the questions, and there's definitely stuff like that there is quite a lot of aspects of this whole family experience. I would go on a bit longer, but overall I think this experience was very very good. Like I was saying earlier, like it's like sometimes you just got to spend time with family because family just matters more sometimes than some other stuff. So there's definitely that kind of stuff where I was where I had that whole family experience going on with my family. So what I want to talk about next is actually, get this right, I guess we could talk about how there was this new hard bass song that came out as of late, and if there's also a few other like topics that I haven't had the chance to talk about because I took a week off the show. Like there's actually also these trailers for Madam Web and Garfield, right? But before we get into that, so there's this new hard bass track, and there's also this other track I want to actually talk about that one of my friends actually made. So I'm just gonna pull it out right now, and just to clarify, it's not even Yami's new track, but it is familiar, I guess. So it's XS Project actually. So let me get it out, right? I think I talked about Hard Bass School, but this is what it sounds like. It actually came out on November 19th, so it came out like 4 days ago, but I didn't even notice it until today because on Spotify it said new releases for you, or Excess Project has a new release out, so there's that. But let's just play this real quick, right? I'm not going to go through the entire thing, right? Here we go. And then I'll share my thoughts, obviously. The song is called V Pip Pip Piteri or something like that. I don't know. I'll give credit as well, but here you go, right? So starting off with like, your typical hard bass beat, right? Let me go over this bit. So that's what that's the track itself. So how do I feel about this song? So when it comes to this Excess Project song, I have to say, right, it's okay. I guess it kind of just sounds the same as any other hard bass song that I've heard before. It's got kind of like this stereotypical donk to it. It's kind of like familiar sound, and there's only so much I can say at this point about all this hard bass music and stuff like that. I mean, I don't know where else to even take this. So I did mention that I would be talking about another song that you kind of aren't actually very expecting of the show because it's not something I normally talk about. So just to give a bit of context here, right? This was actually a friend of mine from New Zealand that has this band that he has called Revere. I think that their band was called Revere or whatever. If I can find the song, I might actually have to go back. Wait, did I like it? Hold on, right. I thought I had to go back to Instagram because he promoted it on his Instagram, whatever. Right, if it's gonna load this right. So the song's called Torn, by the way, right, by Revere. And my friend, by the way, is called Rico, and he made this song with his band. So I'm gonna play some of it and give my thoughts and give credit, obviously, when I talk about it for the clip and description. All right. So it's just kind of starting up with the guitar, you know, getting that build up going on for the song, right? I'm not going to play the full song, but I'll give you an understanding of gist, right? So. I'll bring it closer, right? Right, there's that. I'm just skipping through it, right? So that's the song called Torn, right? So how do I feel about this song? Well, when it comes to this song, right, I definitely think that my friend is a very good singer. Like you could tell he put a lot of effort into the singing there. There's also a lot of like good like mixing in this song as well, like especially in the chorus. I think I might replay this real quick, right? Where was it? I think it's like 2 minutes or something. Where is it? Like you see that, like you want to come inside, like that whole thing. I kind of appreciated how they use that kind of technique. I definitely think this song is good, and that you should check it out. And I know this kind of feels like, oh yeah, you need to promote this guy because he's your friend, James. Well, actually, the song is actually decent in my opinion. Like It kind of feels like a groovy, kind of reggae-ish kind of song that, kind of is kind of typical for New Zealanders to listen to. So I'll give him credit where credit is due. But it's a band, obviously, so it's his friends as well from New Zealand at school. So there's definitely that where we had that whole family Pitlochry experience, like 1 year later after the South Island and all that kind of stuff. And that song, the hard bass song, that was kind of just the same old stuff that hard bass really does. And then you've got the new song by my friend's band. So let's actually dive into what I actually thought about the trailers of Madam Web and Garfield. So just to give you a bit of context here, right, I couldn't actually dive into my thoughts on these originally. So when this episode comes out, it'll be like 2 weeks after the trailers come out, or like 8 days, 9 days, 10 days after the trailers come out, and stuff like that. So just to give you an understanding, right, so Madam Web is actually this upcoming Sony Marvel movie about, like, it's kind of like what I got from this trailer was that it's not like a Spider-Man movie, but it's like about this like female Spider-Man kind of character. There was also like Billie Eilish music in the trailer, and it kind of shows off the plot and stuff like that. And I think there are some articles on how there is some stuff. There has been some controversy, not really controversy, but people aren't really big on this movie, like its trailer or whatever. And to say the least, it just seems like nowadays anything that's superhero related has to be negative. Everybody has to say negative things about it. I'm not gonna say that the trailer blew me away or anything, but maybe I'll give it a watch and review it sort of thing. And I actually have enjoyed Sony movies before, like like a huge kind of staple of the James Ramsey show. This one kind of iconic, well-known thing about me was that how I enjoyed the Amazing Spider-Man 2 despite its flaws, and that is a very, very like polarizing Sony Marvel movie that I enjoyed. I also like the Venom 2 movie. I do remember watching that movie and enjoying it. Granted, I haven't rewatched that movie in a while, so maybe if on a rewatch I would change my perspective, but that's how I feel about the Madam Web trailer. I don't really want to go through an article this time, so I'm not boring you with information. But there is some articles that did say, sorry, the Madam Web trailer has me excited. There is like, is this Spider-Man spin-off trailer deliberately terrible? There's all this speculation about how the movie's going to be terrible. I mean, it's a trailer, and I think just before we move on to the Garfield movie, whatever, it comes out on February 16th, 2024. So that's about, so we're in November, so it'll be like November, January, February. So we're about like 3 months away, I guess, 3 months away. So there's that. So let's get into the Garfield trailer, right? So the Garfield trailer. Now, if you know about the James Rambling reviews, especially, I did actually review the Mario movie, and the reason why I'm actually specifically talking about this Mario movie is because Chris Pratt voiced Mario, and in this same vein, there was also Chris Pratt voicing Garfield, and this was actually announced. This whole Chris Pratt voicing Garfield was actually announced like a while ago in 2021, the same time as announced playing Mario, and people were kind of concerned on the internet. It's kind of this similar thing. It's like, oh, I don't know if this is gonna be any good, but to say the least, this trailer for the Garfield Chris Pratt movie that's coming out, I have to say that the trailer was okay at best. Like, I mean, I'm not gonna tell you that I'm actually excited for this movie. Like, I can tell this definitely is made for kids, and it's not something I'm gonna rush out and see myself. And to say the least, I did think that Chris Pratt sounds just like Chris Pratt in this trailer, and that was kind of some criticisms about the Mario movie was that, or some to say the least, people were saying, oh, that Chris Pratt just sounds like Chris Pratt sometimes in this Mario voice, and there's certainly all of that kind of stuff. I would play the trailer, but it is by this big film company, and so I might get like copyrighted, and I might get some like stuff like that. I don't really want that, right? If it was like a smaller creator or something, maybe it'd be different. Like if it was the band, my friend's band, it'd be different. Like they wouldn't want to like copyright strike me or want some fair use out of it or whatever you call that, right? So we'll just quickly double check here, right? So The Garfield trailer is by Sony, right? It's literally the same people that are making the Madam Web movie are doing this movie for Garfield. So if I play some big studio trailer stuff, then I'm gonna get a strike, or that I'm gonna get an email saying, "Oh, you played something that is made by this big company, and you don't have the rights to this because you don't have a deal with us where you're able to do that sort of thing." So there's definitely that kind of stuff, right? We've sort of had this kind of another kind of interesting mix of topics. And so, what is it? What else is there left on the plate of discussion besides the Pit Lockery stuff and all that? Well, I actually want to talk about how the Joe Rogan Rock podcast, because I actually kind of have an opinion on this one. So, just to give you a bit of context here, right? Right, I have talked about I think I talked about Joe Rogan like a little while ago on the James Ramblin' show about how this Joe Rogan guy, was my first introduction into podcasts and watching podcasts and getting into that sort of thing. Well, he did this recent podcast with the famous Hollywood actor, this famous wrestler guy, The Rock, right? And my thoughts on it, right, is like it came out. I think it came out on Wednesday last week, so it's been about 7 8 days. And I have to say, right, I know Joe Rogan sometimes is able to conduct pretty interesting discussions. Like there are some guests where I'm actually quite compelled by it and I learn something new. But this episode of this podcast, I have to say, right, it's not his best work, especially because there's all these interesting questions that he could have asked him, but it just kind of, to me, it just kind of felt like these two very successful people just agreeing with each other the whole time, and it didn't really seem like that Joe Rogan was ready to even ask him any questions. Like there's this whole thing on Joe Rogan's podcast about how he kind of says that the Rock's on steroids, but I'm pretty sure I actually skimmed through like an hour of this. Like I just kind of skimmed through it because I wasn't very interested about it, right? And he wasn't really asking him very interesting questions. It's like the Rock's just like, "Oh, I'm going to the gym. I'm waking up at 4 a.m. and I'm doing these weights," and there was that kind of stuff. And then they were just talking about Israel versus Palestine, and it wasn't a very interesting podcast. And I'm definitely not the first person to even talk about this sort of thing, because there's even people who are even saying like this is kind of like the fakest podcast I've ever seen, and it's not his best work. It could have been a lot better, but I just think because nowadays, right, a lot of famous actors, they're just kind of too scared to say anything controversial in case they get cancelled and stuff like that. So I mean, there's definitely that kind of stuff that's going on. But I just remember that there was also this kind of other thing where I actually played this Luke Skywalker like Saga Lego game. So I don't know if I've ever talked about this, but I might as well talk about this. So there's this Lego game where you can actually play all of the Star Wars movies in chronological order, or however you want. So episodes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and I have talked about how I've shared my thoughts on how I did enjoy the prequels and stuff like that before on the show, and how I wasn't really like I didn't actually I don't remember specifically, but I did say stuff about how Star Wars Episode 8 and 9 weren't my favourites. Like I think I only watched 20 minutes of both of them, but I didn't that game. It's like kind of like this fun repetitive game. But one big interesting takeaway that I actually found about like this big highlight about this game, was actually the fact that this game made episode 8 and 9 kind of fun. Like more like a bit better than the actual original versions. Like I did actually get a bit bored by episode 9, and there's this whole thing about how Rey is actually a Palpatine, and the main characters like this is actually related to Palpatine, that big villain in Star Wars. And there's all these like there's I mean the sequel trilogy is something that has been roasted to hell and back because people don't like it and had this like bad direction and bad writing and stuff like that. And I do believe I even talked about how there was these Star Wars movie announcements earlier this year, but there's definitely that kind of stuff. So other than that, right, I hope you enjoyed this episode of the James Ramblin' Show, and you're gonna stay tuned for more episodes like this and stuff like that. So we're back after 2 weeks, and you've pretty much missed nothing, haven't you? So yeah, I guess that's it for this episode. Bye, bye, bye.